offers you a plush cushion to relieve you from your discerned plight. Don't bother to calculate the interest as a benefactor of his door. You get what you want for a moment in time as he confiscates your soul. You're making a deal. As a shooting star in a temporal glide, you're making a deal. To be a burned out cinder at the end of the ride, you're making a deal. With the chief light bearer from the other side, you're making a deal.
You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
Do you have a paranormal story you want to share on Night Dreams Talk Radio? You could be a guest. Email us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark wants to give a big shout out to all the truckers that listen to our show. From our compound, from the West Coast to the East Coast to worldwide, both on the internet and terrestrial radio, you're listening to Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark.
And here I am. Boy, I tell you what, the show is going by real fast here tonight. We have Colleen Foley, who worked at, the Lizzie Borden home, which now is a bed and breakfast and a museum. And she's done that for about 5 years, or did it for 5 years. So she has a lot of stories she's been telling us. But my concern here, Colleen, is like, how many ghost hunters? I mean, did they get a lot of ghost hunters coming in there and with all their equipment and trying to get, all this, psychic stuff?
Yes. Lots and lots. We get a lot of amateur groups, but I'll tell you what, as far as national TV shows, let me see if I can remember them all. Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Lab. Kindred Spirits was just there a few weeks ago. I can't even remember them all. But there have been a lot of them. The one that I remember the most was the Ghost Adventures crew was there, and the reason I asked earlier if the other gentleman, James, I think, remembered what floor he was on when that happened, was because there is a nightstand up on the third floor that if you watch the episode of Ghost Adventures, you can hear that open, and Zach turns around and it's open. The drawer is open. It had been closed.
Oh,
you see him filming in that room. The door is completely closed. He comes out of the room to go into the room next door, and you hear that sound, and there was a flashlight in the drawer at that time. We used to keep flashlights for the guests, just in case the power went out. And you hear this drawer open, and the flashlight roll and clunk up against the inside of the drawer. And it was exactly that same noise that it would make every time I opened that drawer. And he turns back around and the drawer is open.
Interesting.
That is interesting. I know when we heard it, we didn't go back in the room. My buddy, we just kind of looked in and seen it was open. And he's like, "That's enough for me. Time to go." We left. So we, I had to go. He was driving, so we left.
Well, I mean,
happens.
You mentioned there's been a lot of ghost hunters. I mean, has any of them got any strange recordings, video recordings, infrared recordings, sounds, or anything?
Yeah, we've had quite a few people catch EVPs, is what they're called. It's electronic voice phenomenon, I believe. And the Ghost Adventures guys did catch one, which is really strange. Because it sounds for all the world like it's saying, "I'll take you to heaven." And I believe they were in Andrew and Abby's room when they got that one. Andrew is not a fan of people traipsing in and out of his house all the time. His spirit is not happy at all with that. So it kind of doesn't surprise me. I've heard him threaten people over voice box sessions and that kind of thing. He's really not a very nice ghost, but he wasn't a very nice person, so that makes sense.
What's he? Yeah. What have you heard on these ghost box? I mean, what type of stuff does he say?
There are quite a few of them that I can't say on the radio.
Okay,
I'm going to be honest with you.
Then we know that isn't some freak accident, because the ghost box, what it does is it scans the radio band, and it takes little pieces of it, and and that's what you hear. It goes one frequency up to another frequency, and it stops when it picks up a signal. So, and when you start hearing things like "you can't talk over the air," because I don't want to find, tells me that that they picked up some interesting conversation.
They really have. It was funny. One ghost box session, and this isn't a nasty thing, was being done by a gentleman named Chris Moon. And it was at an event that we were having called a Ghost Hunters University. What they would do is Chris and his team would come in, and they would host as many guests as wanted to come and stay overnight and give them ghost hunting 101 classes and send them off with equipment to go, hunt the ghosts. Well, this one time we got a lot of mostly semi-professional hunters come in. So there was this one group that was called Scared. Great group of people. And we were all standing in the chimney room, which is the room where the ghosts of the two children spend a lot of time. And Chris started the ghost box session, and he spoke to his spirit guide, and all of a sudden, clear as day, coming out of this box, you hear, "Scared is here." And he said, "No, nobody's scared here." And the box said, "Scared is here." And he remembered that group's name was Scared. That was the name of their group. They knew that they were there.
That would be scary right there, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's
Pardon
good.
my cough, I'm sorry. It was interesting to hear. It was a lot. It was very interesting to hear. They've gotten, we get people who send us recordings of the EVPs that they get, and some of them are kind of weird. Down in the basement, there is, we don't really know what it is. We can't identify it as an actual ghost of a person. It makes itself known with some really, really bad smells and ice cold spots. And you can walk down the cellar stairs and go towards the back of the cellar, and you walk into this spot that's like frigid air. You would swear that you could see your breath, and it smells like rancid butter and rotten meat. And then you walk right through it, and it's gone. But you know that something's there. We were downstairs during an investigation that I was part of as an investigator, and we were doing some EVPs. And when I went back and listened to the recordings, I was talking to my fellow investigator about this thing that lives down there. We just kind of call it an elemental. I call it Mr. Stinky because he smells. But we were talking on the tape about it, and underneath our voices, and as I'm starting to end my sentence, you can almost hear somebody. It sounds like somebody saying, "Stop it," but it's like a scream. I can't even begin to explain. It's like, "Stop it." It was really kind of disconcerting to listen to that while I was still sitting in the basement. We left. We went upstairs after that.
Now, I got to ask you a question. Now, I take it that home had a lot of owners from the day that, Lizzie Borden parents, were murdered to, the last 10 years or 15 years of what it is now. Has anybody died in the house of natural causes or anything have you ever checked on that to see if, anybody died in the house?
The house was never out of private ownership for really any length of time, from right after Lizzie and Emma sold it until it was bought by Martha McGinn's grandparents And Martha McGinn was the lady who owned the house before the current owners bought it. So I would have to imagine that people did die in the house of natural causes. I don't know of anyone specific. I do know that one of the spirits that's in the house did not die in the house. His name was Michael, and he was the caretaker of the house when Martha McGinn owned it. She had a full-time caretaker there, and he stayed up in what we call the chimney room. Now, Michael was a really, really heavy smoker, but there's never been any smoking allowed in the house from the time it became a B&B. Even when Martha owned it, she didn't allow smoking in the house, so he would go outside. Well, in 2004, when the current owners bought the house, Leanne was going to be staying at the house full-time, so they didn't need a full-time caretaker anymore, and they had to let Michael go, which was really sad because Michael loved his job. He loved the house. He loved the people. He just was so content and happy there, and he did a fantastic job from everything that I hear. Well, he went back home to Connecticut, was where he was living, and he fell asleep one night in his bed with a cigarette, and he died from smoke inhalation from the resulting fire. I've had several experiences up in that room where I will wake up to the smell of cigarette smoke and fire smoke. Strong, strong, strong at the same time. And I get up and I run around the house looking to see what's going on, and I don't see or hear anything. And I'd never made the connection until Leanne told me about this person. So when I would get it after that, I'd be sleeping and I'd smell it, and I just kind of assumed that he was around to check up on the guests. So I would get up and I'd say, okay, you know what, Michael, I'm going to go check on the guests. You can come with me if you want to. And that smell would follow me. I would just go by the closed doors, to make sure that everything was okay. And then I'd go, as I was going back up the stairs, I would just tell him, everyone's doing fine. All the doors are locked. Good night. And that, I'm telling you, that smell would just go away. It would disappear.
Very interesting. Now, I got another question that I got to ask you. I got an email from a trucker, matter of fact. When they were, I put it this way, the parents, a lot of times in that time frame, they would have like a wake or a send-off in the parlor. So they would have the bodies there for a couple days or a day or two, and they would invite all the relatives would come over to view the bodies and have a get together. Did they have one for the parents there?
The bodies were kept in the dining room in state until, I believe, the day of the funeral, and there were some folks who came to visit. I don't know if they had like what you would call formal viewing hours, just because the family was so quiet. And, but I do know that there were people who did come in, and the bodies were kept literally in the dining room for several days before the funeral.
Interesting. Sometimes,
and you can imagine in August, that must have been pretty horrific.
Yeah, especially when they didn't have any air, spray to, Yep.
Yeah. Nothing.
What was the temperatures like there in the summertime?
The temperature on the day of the murders, a lot of people say, oh my God, it was so hot. It was 82. It was a warm day. And it probably would have felt warmer to the Victorians, particularly the women, because they had to wear so many clothes. They had petticoats and underskirts and corsets that had to be laced up and all kinds of stuff. So it probably felt like it was a lot higher than 82 that day. But the National Weather Service has been keeping records since I don't know when. And we do know from them that on August 4th, it was about 82 degrees.